The wedding hall was buzzing with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. It was a night of love, of unity, of two families coming together as one. Marcus stood tall in his sleek black tuxedo, his hands wrapped around the waist of his beautiful bride, Jasmine. She looked radiant in her white gown, her eyes sparkling with happiness as she laughed at something her father had just said. This was the moment they had dreamed of, a celebration of love, surrounded by friends and family who had come to witness their union. But not everyone in the room was there with pure intentions. Near the buffet table, a woman in her mid-50s sipped her wine, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. Her name was Linda, but people like her had earned a certain nickname over the years. She carried herself with an air of entitlement, the kind of person who always believed she was in the right, no matter how wrong she was. She had been invited, as a guest of the groom's distant cousin, and while she didn't know Marcus personally, she had already decided she did not approve. She had noticed the way people had surrounded the couple, congratulating them, hugging them, raising their glasses in toasts. She had noticed how Marcus, a black man, had his arm around Jasmine, a woman with pale skin and blonde curls. And to her, it was wrong. Unnatural. Linda turned to the woman beside her, an old friend from the same neighborhood she had grown up, in and whispered, "I cannot believe this. How did this even happen?" Her friend, who had been enjoying her plate of food, looked up in confusion. "How did what happen?" "This," Linda gestured toward the couple, her voice dripping with disapproval. "A young lady like her with a man like him." Her friend's expression darkened. "Linda, I do not think you should be saying things like that." But Linda wasn't listening. Her mind had already been made up. She downed the rest of her wine and set the glass down with a firm clink before marching toward the newlyweds. Marcus was mid-laugh, his hand resting gently on Jasmine's back when Linda inserted herself into their space. The music was still playing, guests were still dancing, but in that moment it felt like the energy in the room had shifted. "Excuse me," Linda said, her tone sharp. "I need to have a word with you." Marcus turned to her with a polite smile. "Of course, how can I help you?" Linda's eyes flickered over him, then back at Jasmine. "Sweetheart, are you sure about this?" Jasmine frowned. "Excuse me? This marriage," Linda continued, her voice laced with fake concern. "Are you sure you're making the right choice? I mean, think about the children. Think about what people will say." A stunned silence fell between them. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he remained composed. Jasmine, on the other hand, felt anger rising in her chest. "This is my husband," she said firmly, her voice steady. "And this is our wedding. What exactly are you trying to say?" Linda let out a huff, folding her arms. "I just think there are certain traditions, certain expectations. I do not know how your parents even allowed this." Jasmine took a step forward, her hands clenched at her sides. "First of all, my parents adore Marcus. Secondly, you are not family. And you have no say in my marriage." Linda's face flushed, clearly not expecting to be challenged so directly. "I am just saying, people are talking. This does not look right. Maybe he should leave before things get uncomfortable." The words hung in the air like a foul stench. Marcus took a deep breath, his patience wearing thin, but he had dealt with people like Linda before. He knew that reacting with anger would only give her what she wanted. "Linda," he said, his voice calm but firm, "you are a guest here, but if you continue disrespecting my wife, I will have to ask you to leave." Linda's eyes widened, as if the very idea of being removed from an event she barely belonged at was offensive. "Excuse me, I am trying to help her." Jasmine shook her head. "Help me? By insulting my husband at my own wedding?" People were beginning to take notice. Guests had paused their conversations, their dancing, their eating. The tension was spreading like wildfire, and all eyes were now on the confrontation. Linda seemed to realize she had lost whatever little ground she thought she had. She huffed, flipping her hair over her shoulder, and gave Marcus one last glare. "Well," she said, "do not say I did not warn you." And with that, she turned on her heel and stormed off. leaving behind a room full of whispers and a couple that refused to let hate overshadow their love. But what happened next? That was something no one expected. Marcus exhaled slowly, shaking his head as he turned back to Jasmine. He could see the tension in her eyes, the way her hands still trembled slightly from anger. He reached for her, giving her fingers a reassuring squeeze. "You okay?" he asked softly. Jasmine nodded, but her jaw was tight. "I just cannot believe that happened. At our wedding." The guests around them were still whispering, some shooting glances toward the exit where Linda had disappeared. Others walked up to them, offering supportive words. Jasmine's mother, a petite woman with silver-streaked blonde hair, came rushing over, her face tight with concern. "What was that about?" she asked, glancing between them. "Who even invited that woman?" "Cousin Derek brought her," Marcus muttered. "She was not supposed to be a problem, but I guess we were wrong." Jasmine's father, a tall man with a warm but no-nonsense presence, placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You handled that well, son. Better than I would have." Marcus forced a small smile. He appreciated the words, but deep down, something about Linda's behavior still gnawed at him. He had dealt with ignorance before, but this had felt different. Something about the way she had spoken, the certainty in her voice, like she truly believed she had the right to dictate their marriage, unsettled him. "Let us not let one bitter person ruin the night," Jasmine said, straightening her shoulders. She forced a smile, though Marcus could see the frustration still simmering beneath the surface. "We have so much to celebrate." He nodded, squeezing her hand again. "You are right, tonight is about us." The music started up again, and the tension in the room slowly faded as guests returned to their drinks and conversations. The couple moved back toward the center of the hall, where more friends and family waited to congratulate them. But even as Marcus smiled and thanked people for coming, his mind kept returning to Linda. Something about the way she had spoken, so sure, so dismissive, left an uneasy feeling in his gut. He had expected judgment from strangers before, but this was different. The way she had spoken to Jasmine, as if trying to plant seeds of doubt, as if she knew something they did not. It just did not sit right with him. He caught Jasmine's eye a few times during the reception, and he could tell she was thinking the same thing. But they both pushed it aside, determined not to let a single person ruin their happiness. Still, the night had a strange energy after that moment. It was subtle, just little things that felt off. When Marcus stepped outside for a breath of fresh air, he noticed a few guests talking in hushed voices, glancing toward the entrance. When he turned to see what they were looking at, he found nothing but the dark parking lot. Later, when he went to grab a drink from the bar, one of Jasmine's distant relatives, a woman in her 60s, gave him a long, unreadable look before, murmuring, "Be careful, dear." He frowned. "Be careful of what?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Just people hold on to old ways. Not everyone changes." Before he could ask what she meant, she walked away, leaving him with more questions than answers. As the night wore on, Marcus and Jasmine danced, laughed, and enjoyed as much of their wedding as they could. But that lingering unease never fully faded, and then just as they were about to cut the cake, the doors swung open again. Linda was back. A hush fell over the room as she strode inside, her heels clicking against the polished floor. But something about her felt different now. Her confidence was shaken, her movements more frantic. It was as if something had rattled her, something she had not expected. Jasmine tensed beside Marcus, gripping his arm. "What is she doing here?" Marcus had the same question. He had assumed she had left for good, that she would not dare show her face again. But here she was, looking more unhinged than before. And then she spoke. "I need to talk to you," Linda said, her voice uneven as she pointed at Jasmine. "Now." The room was silent, all eyes locked on the scene unfolding. Jasmine straightened, her voice sharp. "There is nothing you need to say to me." Linda's face twisted in frustration. "You do not understand. You are making a mistake." "Marcus, stepped forward, his patience finally wearing thin. "You are out of line. You were asked to leave, and now you are coming back to make a scene?" But Linda was not looking at him. She was still staring at Jasmine, her face pale, her hands shaking slightly. "You need to listen to me," she insisted. "You do not know the truth." Jasmine shook her head in disbelief. "The truth about what?" Linda hesitated, glancing around as if searching for support. But the crowd was against her now. Everyone in the room was either confused or annoyed by her presence. Finally, she exhaled sharply. "About him." She pointed at Marcus. A cold silence settled over the room. Marcus felt something inside him tighten. "What about me?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. Linda's lips pressed together. "You are not who you think you are." Jasmine let out a bitter laugh. "You are unbelievable." Linda's eyes darted around again, but no one was coming to her defense. With a frustrated shake of her head, she turned on her heel and stormed back out, leaving the entire wedding party in stunned silence. For a long moment, no one moved. Then slowly the chatter started up again, though it was different this time, more tense, more uncertain. Jasmine turned to Marcus, confusion in her eyes. What was she even trying to say? Marcus had no answer. He could only watch as Linda disappeared into the night, her words still echoing in his mind. And for the first time that night, a new feeling crept into his chest. Not anger, not frustration, but something much worse. Doubt. Marcus sat in the dimly lit bridal suite, his fingers tapping restlessly against the arm of the chair. The wedding was over. Guests had left, the music had faded, and the night had settled into a strange, eerie silence. Jasmine sat across from him, still in her wedding dress, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Neither of them had spoken much since Linda's dramatic reappearance. "What did she mean?" Jasmine finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus shook his head, letting out a slow breath. "I do not know. She was just trying to stir up trouble." Jasmine looked at him carefully, her dark eyes searching his face. "Then why do you look like you think there is something to it?" Marcus frowned, caught off guard. "I do not." Jasmine leaned forward. "Marcus, I know you. I saw your face when she said that. It got to you." He exhaled, rubbing his hands over his face. He hated to admit it, but she was right. Something about Linda's words had stuck with him. He was not sure why. Maybe it was the certainty in her voice, or the way she had looked at him like she knew something he did not. Was ridiculous, he told himself. Linda was just another person who could not stand to see them happy. Still, the doubt lingered. Jasmine reached for his hand. "You know who you are," she said softly. "You know the kind of man you are. Whatever she was trying to do not let it get to you." Marcus nodded, but the uneasy feeling in his chest did not go away. The next morning, he woke up to several missed calls from an unknown number. He stared at his phone for a moment before hesitantly calling back. A hesitant voice answered on the other end. "Marcus?" Marcus frowned. "Who is this?" There was a pause, then the voice said, "This is Evelyn, Linda's sister." Marcus sat up straighter. He barely remembered Linda mentioning a sister, but the name sounded familiar. I wanted to apologize," Evelyn continued. "For what Linda did at your wedding, that was not okay." Marcus was silent for a moment before he said, "Then why did she do it?" Evelyn sighed. "Because she thinks she is right, she always does, but I think she took it too far this time." Marcus frowned. "Too far how?" Evelyn hesitated. "Linda has been digging into things she should have left alone. She has convinced herself that she found something about you, something that she thinks Jasmine should know." Marcus's grip on the phone tightened. "What are you talking about?" "I do not know everything," Evelyn admitted, "but I know she was looking into your past, and I know she thinks she found something that changes everything." A cold feeling spread through Marcus's chest. Evelyn's voice lowered. "I do not know what she found, but Marcus, be careful." Before he could ask anything else, the call ended. Marcus sat there, gripping his phone, his heart pounding. He did not want to believe that anything Linda had said had any weight. But now, there was a part of him that could not shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, there was something he did not know. Jasmine walked in, still in her robe, a sleepy look on her face. Who was that? Marcus hesitated, then forced a small smile. No one important. He did not know why he did not tell her. Maybe because he did not want to worry her. Maybe because he needed to figure things out himself first. But as the day went on, he could not shake the nagging feeling that his life was about to change in a way he never expected.